it is important that as librarians, we collaborate with traditional leaders, like the chiefs in the area, like traditional organizations, like all our leaders in the communities, to be able to produce documentaries of our festivals, to have community publishing, to repackage such knowledges into storybooks written in our local languages, posters, short videos, short clips, and other things for other people to see. The ball is in our court. And today, we are going to continue this conversation. The conversation will start with Tony telling us on how we can help these leaders to license their work, or how we can lead in this licensing for them. Then it will follow with Dorcas Wapukulu telling us on how we can translate these knowledges, or the traditional knowledge that we have in Africa. How do we translate them? To what language? How? She'll lead us on that. Then Dr. Nkem, as usual, our own, will come and tell us about documentation, how the African traditional knowledge can be documented to make it open. It is important that we tell our own stories in our own languages, because we can tell it better. Before I call in Tony, please, if you want to ask any question, kindly use the Q&A button and then type your question there. After all the presentations, or after all the conversations, we will come back and take all the questions. We will also share the clips or the presentations with all participants via your email, and then we will upload them to AFLIA YouTube. Please, if you are not able to join us yesterday, or if you joined and in one way or the other your internet was disturbing you, kindly go back to the AFLIA YouTube channel and listen to what was said yesterday. It was so much knowledge shared yesterday, and thank you very much. And Tony, please, you can take the lead now.
Thank you very much. I will just stop sharing for a moment, and I'll put on my video for a moment while you can see who I am. So thank you very much, Doreen, for that introduction, and we're going to get straight on with it now. I'm going to be talking to you about, as you've heard, about open licensing, but it's a continuation of yesterday's conversation. So let me share my screen, and this is what I'm going to be talking about today. And I'm with these conversations, we're only talking for a short time for each one. We have sent the 2 presentations out in the WhatsApp group, and if you want to look at this offline, you're welcome to do so. We sent them out this morning about 20 minutes, 30 minutes ago. So I'm going to be talking a bit about open licenses, and then I'm going to be passing over to my colleague, Dorcas Wapukulu. Okay, so yesterday you heard a very, very interesting conversations about African traditional knowledge, as well as local histories. And that's really what these conversations are about. And they are very crucial for African communities. So in the sessions yesterday, in the conversations, you heard about how they can be collected. And also, we touched on the idea of permission being given to make the content open. So, as you know, our collaboration between AFLIA and OER Africa is about openness. And just to give you a taster, there's a course on openness that's going to run in Moodle that AFLIA is going to offer to at least a proportion of its members, hopefully before the end of the year. But we're about openness. So we're actually talking about how to make the content of the traditional knowledge and the local histories open. Now, there's a whole discussion around openness about why it is important. And today we're not going to get into that. There were some comments yesterday in the chat. And we also would be very happy for people to comment in the chat today or in the Q&A about the concept of openness and why it's important. We're not actually going to cover that today, but it's a very important area for people to really understand this concept of why should various things, whether they're open educational resources or others, why should they be open? So we're very happy for people to make comments around that in the chat today. So today I'm going to be talking about licenses, and the main license that is used when sharing open resources is the Creative Commons license. Many of you will have heard of this, and you will be familiar with it. But today I'm going to touch on three areas of it, of the licensing system. And these are the main ones that people might be interested in using when they are sharing traditional knowledge or local history resources. So actually, we're going to look at just three of them. You might have seen another image with various different licenses. There are a total of 6 from the Creative Commons, but we're going to look at just 3 today, and then we'll touch on the remainder. And I'm not going to spend very long on them, and then we're going to move on to the idea of, well, if you get permission from a village elder to share the resources that they may provide, then you need to make it clear to that elder that, in fact, these are going to be shared, and they need to understand the concept of it. So therefore, you might need to translate this idea into another language. And that's what Dorcas will be talking about a little bit later on. So I'm talking about these 3 licenses. The first one is the simplest. It's the most open one. And it is basically CC, as in Creative Commons, by. And all that means is that you have to attribute or give credit to the person who owned the resource. So the technical side of it is that you can distribute them, you can distribute the resource, you can adapt it, you can translate it, you can build upon it, as long as you credit the author of that original creation. So let's say it is a piece of traditional knowledge from a particular village in a particular part of the country, then those people who created that knowledge would need to be attributed. They would need to be credited. You'd need to say that this piece of knowledge comes from them. And that's where they need to understand that this is the process. So that's where you might need to translate the concept of this license into the language of the local people. So that's the simplest one. You can use that resource in any way you like. And notice, you can adapt it. You can build upon it. Those are important things. But you have to credit the person or the people who created it to start with. That is the idea of by. Who is it by? The second one I'm going to talk about today is the same as the first, but you can decide, or they can decide, the people who created the knowledge can decide that the work that they're sharing cannot be used commercially. So this is called CC by NC, means non-commercial. It cannot be used for profit. And you or they might have a good reason for saying, okay, this knowledge from this community is important to share, but we don't want other people to make a profit out of it. So you're welcome to use the license that is not for profit. It's called CC by NC. And the third one I'm going to talk about today is a bit more restrictive. Again, you have to attribute the original author or authors by, who is it by, but you cannot make any changes to the original. And that's quite important, very different from the first one I showed you, where you can adapt it, make changes, etc., etc. In this one, you can't. Now, what could be an example of this? Well, it could be a piece of knowledge that you do not want to be changed in any way. If we take it to the modern world, the example I give is if a person wants to share a publication that they've created, they may rightly not want that publication to be changed. Maybe it's got some interesting findings. They don't want somebody to change that because they wrote up this piece of, might be research, and they don't want changes to be made to it. So this one is called, sorry, I've put the wrong one in here. So this one is the more restrictive one. It's ND, no derivatives. That's what it stands for. So the last one was NC, not commercial. This one is no derivatives. It's more restrictive. You attribute the author, you can't make any changes to the original. And that might be valid in your case, or the case of a particular piece of research or something that's involved in your community, or the communities you're collecting this information from. So there we have them, three of them, CC by NC, and CC by ND. Very open, so let's just look at them in terms of openness. I hope you can see those now. The three licenses, by, NC, and ND. And I've gone through them, CC by NC, and CC by ND. There are others, I'm not going to go into detail on them now, but they're basically combinations of the others. And there's a thing called SA, which is share alike. I'm not going into that now. And just to finish, you can see that there's a degree of openness in Creative Commons licenses. There is the most open to the least open. And we've been looking at this, which is very open. This one is even more open because you don't even need to attribute. We've been looking at this one. We've also been looking at ND and NC, which are slightly less open. So that's really all I've got to show you today. But I just wanted to indicate to you the sorts of licenses you can use when you are sharing traditional knowledge and local history that you as a librarian are collecting. So that's all from me. Thanks very much.
But Dorcas is going to talk to us about translations. So this is also very, very, very important to us as librarians when it comes to us making traditional knowledge open. You know, it's not everyone who can read English. And so how do we translate them? Is it to in a pictorial form or in our own languages where our people can understand? So let's hear Dorcas. Dorcas, you are welcome. Kindly take over.
I will talk maybe also from the point of view of African storybook, where, you know, you've mentioned like sharing local knowledge, you've mentioned stories, etc. And we have a lot of that on African storybook. So as Tony already mentioned, the CC BY, you can distribute as the resource is. You don't do anything, you just distribute as it is. But one thing we also need to remember is that when a resource has the author who composed the text, there is also the illustrator who drew the images for the resource. So that means you acknowledge both the writer of the text as well as the person who drew the images, because they are actually the original. So you do that for both for adapting, for translating, and for building onto that resource. Yeah, and I just wanted to show you, I don't know if I can show you an example. May I?
Please go ahead. Please share, give us examples, let's see, because it's important we know how to go about this. Because after this, I'm sure some librarians would like to go straight and then start doing work on this.
Yeah, now of course, of the internet, it might take forever. So if it opens, you will see. Yeah, so this is an example of a story. The original was Letter to Mom. And if you can see, I'll just flip through and read. It's a very short story, 16 pages or 18 pages. And then somebody built onto it and had a longer story. Let me see if it opens. Okay, so in translation, we talk about translation from my own experience. So when you are translating, I think we want to be aware of who is the target audience. So whatever piece of resource you want to translate, please, you think in terms of the audience, their age, the proficiency of the language into which you are going to translate. And secondly, you want to think about the content, the message you want to pass. Because the content originally may have been meant for a different audience, but if you want to take it and translate it for a different audience, different context, then you want to see how are you going to package that message, that content, so that it can make sense to the next set of audience. So the rule is keep the message simple in terms of your choice of vocabulary, the language level, as I said, depending on the age range, the proficiency of the people in terms of the language. So you will make a choice in terms of the vocabulary and the level of language. And then once you have done your translation, it is important to check the message in your translation against the message in the source language. So if I was translating a resource, a folktale, for example, from English into Kiswahili or into my mother tongue, then I want to see, is the message originally meant the same as the message I'm carrying now in the next language that I translated it? Is it saying the same thing? And if not, what have I done wrong, or how did I depart from that so that I am now passing a different message altogether? And it is important to aim at making meaning. It's not about literal translation, but making meaning of the resource that I am translating. And the next thing I want to mention, which is very closely related to translation, is adaptation. We often translate a resource, but at the same time, we are adapting that resource so that it is more relatable to the next target audience. We want to contextualize it. So in some cases, you might get a resource written in some other country, written in some other country in Africa, with different names of places, of characters, etc. But the people I'm translating the resource for are not familiar with maybe those names. So I might decide, as I translate, I also adapt the names to be more relatable to the next audience that will read it. Sometimes also you come across phrases. English has phrases that are not in our local languages, for example. So you might get a phrase in English, which if you translate literally, it won't pass the message that was intended. So you want to look at that phrase and say, what does it really mean in the language in which I want to translate? And then pass that message without having to carry the phrase as it was in the original language. We also run into issues of words. There are some very long words in our local languages or in English. And when you choose that long word and you use it to translate, it might be too difficult for the target audience. So it is a choice you make. Which words long versus short, long sentences versus short sentences. You will find a very short sentence in English. When you translate it into a local language, you need to write 3 sentences to accommodate that original 1 sentence. But it's also the other way around. Like, for example, in Kiswahili, a sentence like, I will go, I can say I will go in 1 word, which takes in everything, the subject, the everything, the verb and everything. So you want to be aware of you know, the issues of structural differences between the language from which you translate and in the language to which you are translating. You might also, as you translate, you adapt by adding activities. For example, you are translating a resource, a folktale that you intend to be used by children of a specific age, and you want to make it more engaging, more modern. So you can add activities that actually speak to a modern child. You take a folktale, but make it more suitable for the modern child and add in some activities, maybe at the end or in the middle or wherever, because remember, you are adapting, you have all that freedom to drop out some things, to add new things, to build on, and in that way, you are adding on activities. You can also choose to leave out a whole section of you know, somewhere that you think won't speak to your next audience. So you choose to leave it out and put something more relevant. And then at the end of it, remember, we want to attribute, you know, as Tony talked about, attribution and acknowledgement. So you will have to put the name, a new name onto the version you have either translated and adapted. You put a name of the person who did this, but you don't forget to include the original author's name and the original illustrator's name. And if you have added other, let's say, other images, other graphics in the new version, they will also appear, but you must now add another name of the person who created those graphics or those images. And then lastly, you must acknowledge the source. If you are translating translating and adapting a folktale, somebody must have told it. Maybe you got it online, you have a URL, so you must include and say original source and put the URL from where you got that resource that you translated. And then, of course, the year of publication or the year when it was recorded by maybe a storyteller, etc. So I think those are the few things I thought I might share, but if you have questions, I can respond to them. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this. So in all this, what we are saying is that it should be simple. Don't go use any language that other people will not understand. Thank you very much. Can you please make your slides available so that when we are sharing, we can share with the people, with our participants? We will now welcome Dr. Nkem to take over, then we'll take questions.
Thank you very much, Doreen, and thank you, Tony. Thank you, Doreen. Dorcas, yeah, thank you. I wish to ask Dorcas, please. You know, when we started our translation journey, we started with Storyweaver. Then we did a little bit of African storybook, but I saw that the interface of your platform is a little bit, let's say, a little bit more difficult for us to use than Storyweaver. And I hope to start the early literacy development course, if not next week, then the upper week. And instead of Storyweaver, I really, really want to use African storybook. So maybe we can talk later about this. Is that okay? Dorcas, please.
Yes, we can, Kim. And actually, it's been changed a little, so it's a little easier, but we can talk about it.
All right, great. Thank you very much. So let me continue from where I stopped yesterday, and also now, because we are talking of how do you document this traditional knowledge and local history that we are going to collect. I wish to appreciate Dr. Nwofo yesterday for all the examples that she gave. They were all wonderful. And also some of them gave me thoughts, food for thought to now think, how do we really get into this? She talked, there was a place that she talked about intellectual property. Does it belong to the community or one person or a family or a clan? Then Tony today now spoke of the open licenses that we may use. And then I'm trying to tie it with what Liz also told us yesterday about how the things we do or local knowledge has spread all over the world. And then Stanley wanted to start a fight. He was lucky that I was in transit then. I mean, how can he say that the Ghana rice, jollof rice, is better than the Nigerian one? But because I was in transit, that was why that war did not erupt fully. So now I want to get into all this, with all those ideas and the things that we learned yesterday and the ones we are learning today. I came up with this. Now, the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, this article 31.1, it says that whoever that has that knowledge, that you have the right to maintain it, to control it, project, develop as much as you can, because it is your cultural heritage, is your cultural expression. So let's have that at the back of our minds, that even while we are trying to open up this knowledge, it belongs to, originally belong in quote to people. There were people that started it, that own it, so to say. I remember I told, I think I told Stanley and some other people too yesterday, that when I never knew that Ananse the spider originated from Ghana. Because when we were small, I'll eat and eat and eat, and my mom would say, this your fat stomach, one day it will burst like that of Ananse the spider. And I always look to, I'll look at those spiders and I wonder, are they really Ananse? Who are they? So, but why I'm sharing it is that, these stories spread. But while we understand that they belong to people, there are some that are open. It's not really, most of it is not really in public domain. What do I mean? In Africa, there are protocols. There are the way we share knowledge is different from the accepted ones. Let's say copyright and so on. But that does not mean that they are not differently protected. You can't know the masquerade dance and the masquerade slang information that they have, knowledge that the masquerade group, if you're not initiated into the group. Now, when I say initiated, please don't go in evil, or because in Africa, initiation, it's something bad. Oh, this one is not good. Devil has come. No. Initiation here means being a part of that group. They are protected in different, you may have to ask permissions, like Florence said, Dr. Wofford said yesterday, before you can open them up. You just don't get information and feel, oh, I have it. Let me go and share immediately. Then when one, because what I'm sharing is actually, how do we integrate this local knowledge, this traditional knowledge into OERs? And why we are doing it is that, you see, OERs are, how do I put it now? OERs, you can revise them, remix them, reuse them, and so on for specific purposes and specific audiences. But in doing that, it's important to have a clear understanding that African traditional knowledge is more than just information about a process, an object, or a festival, or something like that. It is linked, is linked to the way we live, what we believe in, our ways of knowing, of being. And living within the different communities and ethnicities within Africa. Why I'm laying this background is for you to understand that when we open up our African traditional knowledge, it is just not knowledge, it is part of who we are. It is part of our cultural fabric. It tells the stories of what we do or what we used to do or our forefathers did and what we have learned from. I read of, I think it's in Tanzania, where they do this rotational farming, and how they do it is different from the way we do it here in my side of the world. But that knowledge passed from this person to that person, and it is a part of who they are. You know, or maybe this year you cultivate yam in a particular piece of land. Another year you now say, no, what I'll do here is melon, you know, not anything that has tubers. But there I learned that what they do is that they plant, I think, on sides of the hills, and then they dig these deep pits so that when rainwater comes with erosion and sand from and soil from other places, it will fill those pits, and they'll now use that side again for new cultivation. So why I'm saying is for us to know that whatever we are going to open up, it is who we are. It is a part of who we are. It is like the life that we live. So we need to be, should I use the word cautious or sensitive, so that you don't go and share fantastic things that maybe just come from your imagination and say that is the way we are. Now, I want to bring us back to this. I had shared yesterday about the Dewey Decimal Classification and how it gives a small window of recognition for knowledge from Africa in the areas of religion and languages. So I'm saying here that when we now get into this fully, because African librarians, I can assure you we are going to get into this. And when we get into this, we are going to change librarianship in Africa. It seems like a far off statement now, but I can assure you, once Africa can get, let's say 30, 40 dedicated people that understand this, we are going to change a lot of things in Africa. So when we start this, please understand that that framework that that was handed down to us, that we learned in library schools, may not really be the best for categorization and creating awareness or making visible African traditional knowledge. Let's just have that at our minds, please. Then I also now say that as we are doing it, please, it should be done consciously so as to avoid cultural appropriation or misappropriation. What do I mean? Because I get a story from northern Nigeria, and I tell that story. It doesn't mean that it is me, it is my culture. It's coming from another place, or trying to mock up traditional knowledge, all to get one big resource or something like that. Remember, we are talking about how do we add this to OERs, and because OERs are remixable, reusable, you know, and so on. Let's say there's an OER on let's say library usage just library usage, or libraries and society. I remember that course now. So if an OER is created for that, you now find out that when we finish doing this thing that we are going on to do now, you will find out that you can get bits and pieces of the local knowledge that we are going to create and add in that course, so that when somebody in Ghana is taking this course, that person will now know these are the areas in Ghana that people still need to know more about. We don't learn library and societies in absentia of our realities. That is That is the basic thing that we are trying to do, so that when these OERs are now created all over Africa, the creators will have information, knowledge, resources that are open that they can now use as part of their OERs. And when I'm conscious of this, to now say that OER Africa has been particularly good, in this. They brought AFLIA into the mainstream of OERs. So I believe that as we go on with this, they'll continue to help us, lead us, guide, instruct, and then help us to build what we really have in mind. A body of resources that scholars, researchers, learners, teachers can use all over Africa to create OERs. And when they are doing that, those resources will tell our stories better than somebody that passed through our airport at Abuja and say, oh, that one was here last year and this one is now here, and write about it without really understanding who was the land taken from, where are the communities that used to live there and stuff like that. So I'm going on. All right. And then this one. Why we believe this will work is that, like Tony said something. He says something about knowing your community, knowing the people that you're going to collect the knowledge from. And I believe that librarians, that we already have this relationship with our user communities, whether in towns, in cities, urban areas, or in our rural communities. I don't know if somebody from Nakaseke library is here, from Uganda. That library made an impact on my life, because when we got there and I saw that Madame Rhoda, one old woman, putting on her funky eyeglasses and so on, it made me realize that the owners of libraries are the users. It's not the librarian, it's not the staff. The owners are those people that use the library. And when you get to know them, then it will be easy for you as a librarian, as an archivist, or whoever to collect knowledge from them. And Dr. Nwafo also said something like that. Then this one, like we say in Nigeria, it is sweet my body. Nothing about African traditional knowledge without Africans. Please don't come and tell my story for me. I can do that well enough and clearly. Then this one, please, let's bear in mind that not all African traditional knowledge wants to be open. No, not all. Once you know that, it will now guide you in how you strive to open them up, in how you strive to collect them. There must be some consensus on, okay, can we tell this story? Yes, you may. Last month, I worked with a group of people in Anambra Wikimedia Network. And what we did was to record for the first time in pictures the August women meeting in 3 senatorial zones in Anambra. And we wanted to go to 6 towns, but we got the shock of our lives. Some people said, don't take our pictures. Some people said, no, we do not want to be seen anywhere. Let us just do the things we want to do and go. And some people were enthusiastic. Yes, yeah, this is me. This is what I'm doing. You see, so not all traditional knowledge or local history wants to be open. Again, like I said, we must be sensitive to people to understand what they want and what they do not want. Yesterday, Grant raised an issue about incentives. Sometimes that incentives may not be financial, it may not be funds or anything. It may just be better explanation, clearer explanation that this is what we are doing and this is how we want you to be a part of it. That recognition, that knowledge that people are going to hear about what you people do. Sometimes that is just what they need. Then again, there was something that Dr. Nwofo said about, let's say you go to bone setters and they want to, and before they tell, that's the traditional ones, before they tell you how it's done, you have to pay them. I see that as a consultation fee, not really as incentive, because for you to be treated by them, let's say you have a broken bone, you have to pay. So you see that kind of thing as a consultation fee. You want this, okay, for you to see me, just like medical doctors will do in their clinics, you have to pay for the card, then the consultation fee, and then you get seen by the medical doctor. So I don't think it should be different for those that have our traditional knowledge. Then this one, how it is shared matters. Tony has spoken about the open licenses, and Dorcas also spoke about translation. That is really important. You know, it is really important because how it is shared, it really matters. Now, I saw this initiative that they call Local Contexts. It's a global initiative, and it supports how communities can have, you know, the tools that they can use to have some control over how knowledge from them is collected, managed, displayed, assessed, and used. That's their a link there. After, I'll put it up the chat box and we can have a look at it. Now, the first one that struck me there is this one they called provenance labels. This one is for if you collect traditional knowledge, where is it from? The attribution side that Tony talked about in the open licenses. I believe this can be merged with it for Africa. So you tell us, which clan did you get your story from? Which family was that? Which community was that? Is it the same from multiple communities in an area, or is this just done by a creative? You know, because having this kind of metadata will be important for libraries so that we can categorize the knowledge that we will get clearly, and people will now know that, okay, if I want knowledge from a clan, this so clan, this is where I'll find it. I found this interesting because this is what we do in cataloging. So they say the first one is the provenance labels, like I said. The second one is the protocol labels. You know, when we collect this knowledge, is it verified? Is it verifiable? Is it not verified? Is it a seasonal thing that happens? This knowledge, is it a seasonal thing that happens? Like in my place in Anambra State, we have this this thing that we call a festival. I can't even translate it well now. We call it Oriri Okochi. That's the festival that comes before people start planting. You know, and it's seasonal thing. So when you collect that kind of knowledge, you can put that protocol label. They have marks but I didn't bring them here because I believe that this is something we'll get into later when we get ready to do this, or when we can now see how we can merge it with the CC licenses, because those open licenses are critical. These are just additional things that we need for documentation as librarians. Then you can also say, is it open for women, and why it is open for them? You know, is it secret? Like I said, if it's a masquerade thing and you can get bits and pieces of it, you should be able to indicate that this is really a secret thing, you know, that I got from this clan, this family in this area. And the last one, I should think, definition labels. This is just like an extension of the one that Tony he told us about, the CC by ND. You know, when you do it, you know, when we have this kind of thing, we add it. You now know, oh, this is just for community use. This is just for outreach. This is the one you can, you know, it will help us to break it down as librarians, because librarians will also ask, will always ask about added entries. You know, how do I assess this information resource? The added entries is just like a part of what we do, and that was why I thought this is important to us as we do this. Then yesterday, Stanley, when he was closing up, you know, I heard him say something. Of course, I couldn't reply then. I heard him say, what do we think is the way forward? Dr. Nwofo answered and said that it's better that there's a proper coordination, and then I added synchronization so that we know what we are going to do. And then Omorodion had written something in the chat box about standardization, so that we can have, in quotes, a code, you know, a definite pathway. If you're going to do this, this is what you do. This is how you can do it. Because like I said yesterday also, we are looking forward to having a subdomain where we are going to store all this, so that it will be easy for anyone to access from every part of the world with these added entries. Then AFLIA hopefully will work with stakeholders from different library types to come up with a statement on this African traditional knowledge. You know, like I said yesterday, the knowledge from Africa, from our classification schemes, you know, it appears to be on the periphery, but no, we want to move it right to the center. And we believe that if we have a statement on this and then go on to create a template or templates for different library types to now have as policies, that's really changed the face of librarianship in Africa. And beyond that, it will go on to open systematically, you know, in a clear, standardized manner, African traditional knowledge. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Kim. Thank you so much. And thank you to Dorcas. Thank you to Tony. This is another level. We have taken our conversation yesterday too. And well, before we continue, there are some questions here that needs to be answered. And after the presenters give their answers, if you are in the participant team and you want to say something, add something, you can raise your hands and we'll allow you to talk. So the first question is, what techniques can we use to get elders to share content freely? Because sometimes they think we are going to make money out of their knowledge. This is very important because in Africa, it's crucial that you let them know. So this question goes to all the presenters. What technique can we use to get elders to share their content freely?
You see, first of all, recognize that these are human beings first. And again, it depends on the manner of presentation. It depends on how you ask the questions. It depends on how you explain. I had worked in Nigerian Book Foundation for 2.5 years plus. And in that foundation, we have these books written in Igbo and in English on bone setting, on how to cure madness, on how to tap palm wine and so on. Now, but in getting that, in getting the information that we put in those books, we had to work with people within communities. We had to work, first of all, we had to identify who has this knowledge. And when you go to a local medicine man that thinks he can cure a mad person, you at the point you might think yourself to be crazy too, because you don't understand half of the things that is being said or even understand the process or whatever. But again, approach, and be clear about what you want to use that information for, so that you can tell the person boldly and clearly, this is what we want to do with this. Like I said, Dr. Grant had talked about incentives. If you want to call them incentives, that's okay, but I call them consultation fees. If you think that they need consultation fees, for goodness sake, go on ahead and give to them. It's not as if they are selling that knowledge, because they will still have it with themselves there, but they're allowing you to share from what they have. So go ahead and consult them. That's my own idea. I'm sure that there may be other ideas out there.
All right. So Tony, please, if you have anything you can add to it, and Dorcas, you are here. Liz is also here. Please, if you have anything, add, because there's nothing like too much knowledge.
Well, I just do have one thing to add to Peter's question. Tony showed us 3 licenses, and 2 of the licenses speak directly to Peter's question about commercial or non-commercial use of knowledge. First of all, the licenses must be translated and explained in such a way that everyone understands them. As it stands now, even the English is very complicated. And so all of that needs to be simplified and translated to a language that the person who is donating the knowledge will understand what you're talking about. So you have non-commercial, which will prevent anyone else from taking your information and using it commercially. If the producer of the knowledge wants to, he or she can also say that it must be non-derivative, which means that the words that have been used to tell the story or share the culture, give the recipe, cannot be altered in any way. So those are 2 ways that contributors might be relieved about the whole issue of commercial versus non-commercial. But we have to return to making sure that everyone understands what the concepts mean and what it all entails. And that's a massive undertaking.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Tony, do you have anything to add?
I did something that people may agree with or not agree with. I actually asked ChatGPT to answer that question. And it gave 12 responses, which I think are actually very useful. And they are in the Q&A. If you'd like to look at them at the Q&A, you can see the responses there. But it's things like build trust and respect, offer recognition and credit, collaborative approach, respect privacy and boundaries, the sorts of things that Nkem's already spoken about, and Liz too. So this is actually very helpful. It's got some very useful ideas to assist one to do that.
Oh, good. This is very good. I've seen the responses. Thank you so much. So there's another question, and this one is directed to Dr. Nkem because your name was specifically mentioned here. So it says, coincidentally, there is currently a social uproar in my state emanating from some books used in secondary and primary schools. People accuse the books for introducing children to foreign culture that is detrimental to local culture and tradition. So what I want to ask the speakers, especially the current presenter, Dr. Nkem, how libraries can influence the content of books adopted in our schools. How the campaign for open translation and adaptation activities of libraries will transcend library walls and reach users at their setting, especially school settings. So
thank you very much for that, Doreen. You see, when books are being chosen for curriculum in schools at different levels, sometimes it's a matter of politics. Sometimes it's a matter of, I've seen it happen in some places. They do not even, the people in charge do not even go through the books, themselves. They'll just tell them that it's good without going through the content. Then again, the person asked how we can influence that. You see, influence is a term that sometimes you can try to use lobby along with it. How strong are library associations at national levels? Have they ever thought of this? Because one person on his or her own may find it difficult to do this. Of course, if you have enough clout, you can, but when the library association is involved, it speaks loudly, is a clearer voice that if you want to do this, please consider this so and so, without saying use this book or that book. So library associations will have to speak up about this to know that what children read affects them. But again, you have also to understand that education is global. While we advocate for our current realities to be a part of what is in educational resources, also know that they should also be aware of what happens in the outside world so that they don't get lost. But in doing that, don't in any way demean or bring down the local culture, the local way of doing things. So there needs to be that balance, and it has to be brought to light by the national library associations. And then also, they can begin to create awareness, because like I told us in our WhatsApp group, the first step is even to create awareness. What is this all about? Why open? What is open? What are OERs? Why do we need them? How can they influence quality and inclusive education? Because that inclusive is also a key word, quality and inclusive. How can it be done? All right, this can help us. So who's going to do it? Who will do this or do that? You see, it's not possible for, let's say, AFLIA in Accra, Ghana, to influence something that happens at a local level in Zimbabwe. But if AFLIA working with the National Library Association, it can be done. It can be done. But again, like I said, awareness. If we are going to lead this as information professionals in Africa, we have to step up. We have to declare boldly, librarians are this, we are this, and we are doing this. This thing about openness, open licensing, open educational resources, is not something you hide under a table and do. Something you stand out and declare boldly. That is how we can sway the minds of people to begin to know this. A publisher asked me, how will this affect them? This OER that I talk about, how will it affect them? I said, well, it's for education, quality and inclusive education. And you can also learn how to do it. But it doesn't stop you from publishing the text that you publish. That all we just want is to ensure that there's equitable access to resources that children, young people, they use in school, and that it should be quality, high quality, and then inclusive, so that you don't come and tell a small child. I have a granddaughter, and we went through a YouTube channel that teaches alphabets. She has never seen a zebra. She had never seen. And when I say Z, okay, first of all, I said it with my local dialect, Z, and the girl just looked at me. She didn't say anything until I said Z. She said, and I said it's for zebra. She didn't say anything because, I mean, she can't relate to it yet. So that is why we also speak of inclusive. So I think, like I said, politics with the National Library Associations, then awareness. But you know, that one is easy to say, oh, they can do it, they should do it. You yourself, me, myself, that's everybody, one person, just a voice, 2 voices, 3 voices, 10 voices, 20, 50 voices, speaking about OERs, open licensing, on any platform online. You may be surprised that 1 or 2 people, or 3 or 5 or 10 can listen to you and now ask questions. And from there, we'll change things and make it to happen. Thank you.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Ankem. There's a recommendation here, a recommendation from Peter. He says, I think as librarians, we need to have a hands-on training on content creation and documentation of local content for future use. And there's another one here from, what is the full name? Okay, let me check. It says, in order to make, from Jamilu, in order to make traditional knowledge and local history available as public commons, I think African libraries need to embrace social media as a good channel of communication. There is a need for social media archiving of traditional knowledge, local history, and current happening. Thank you very much, Jamilu. Okay, Dr. Ankem has shared a link here on the traditional knowledge. You can check and click on it and then use it later on. But you see, we've been talking about our local traditional knowledge. Nobody has heard anything about Anansi. Liz told us or gave us a few presentations on the Anansi stories. I mean, it was even an example. Let me give you a gist of who Anansi is. Kweku Anansi is the main character in our African Anansi story, the Ghanaian one. And Kweku Anansi is known to be mischievous, greedy, cunning, wise, and everything. In Ghana, before we share Anansi story, we say, ah, bra, 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 bra. Then the audience will respond, yo, yo. You know why? It is for you to get the attention of your audience. So once upon a time, Kweku Anansi and his family members, as farmers, they had a lot of farm produce that year. They had a lot of their crops yielded much fruits. And Anansi, being mischievous and cunning, called his family members. The wife of Anansi is called Okonoria, and he has 3 sons, Efrudohwe, Etikelenkele, and Nankonhwea. Etikelenkele simply means big head. Nankonhwea means tiny legs. And then Efrudohwe means pot belly, with their daughter in Tinkuma. Anansi called them, bid them farewell, and said he was going to die. Can you imagine? He told his family members, I am going to die, but when I die, bury me in our farm. So he led his sons to go and dig his own grave. After digging the grave, Anansi went back to dig a tunnel from where his grave is to another end of the farm, so that as wise as he is, he can always escape the heat in his coffin. And we all know that in Africa here, our great-grandmothers or our grandmothers used to have cooking utensils in the farm. So Anansi told the wife that when I die, bury me in the farm so that my ghost will be a security man for the crops in the farm. And the wife said, thank you very much. 2 weeks after bidding the farewell, Anansi died for real. He died. And so they went to bury him in the farm, in the grave that he dug with his family. Now, Anansi, after burying him, the man has already dug a tunnel, so he escaped through the tunnel. Then every night, Anansi will come and prepare food in the farm with the crops. He will prepare fufu and all that. Sometimes you go through the traps that his sons have set. If there is bush meat, he will use it to prepare his food and eat in the farm in the night. Before 5 a.m., Anansi will run away and go through the tunnel and escape. This continued for some time, so the wife and the family members became worried. Anytime they come to the farm, the wife will cry and will calling the husband, and she will go like, "Kwekwa Nancy, Kwekwa Nancy, efo na odo jamino akonfo ewie dio pasa," which means that Anansi, the farm you left for me, thieves are stealing all the produce. You don't even have money to do anything. Then Anansi will respond in the tunnel. Jayo, Jayo, Ukunewo, Yempaya Dio Konori. Means stop complaining. A widower should not complain of missing items. This went on for some time. Then the family decided to make a glue mannequin and put it in the farm in order to catch the thief. Unknown to Anansi, he came that night to see the mannequin in the farm. He got furious and said, "Hey, who are you? Why are you in my farm? If you don't talk to me, I'll slap you." How can a mannequin talk? Then Anansi slapped the mannequin. One hand
I remember this. I remember this story. I remember it. Go on.
One hand got glued to the mannequin. He used the other hand again. He used both legs. Anansi used his head. This man cannot do anything again. The following morning, the family members came to the farm. "Oh, Papa, apparently you are the thief, stealing all the things." You know Anansi, of course. Anansi is cunning. He said, "No, my ghost came here to come and protect the land, and I met this man." So they carried him to the house to help remove the glue and then set him free. But what is the moral lesson you learn here? I remember my grandmother saying that you must learn to be honest to the people around you. Don't be greedy or selfish. In Anansi's greediness, in order to eat more of the farm produce than his family members, he faked his own death. The embarrassment Anansi caused his family is also another thing to look at. If you don't behave well, morally, if you become a thief, if you are greedy, if you are this, you embarrass your family. So this is where my story ends. Kwekwa Anansi, the mischievous one, always having his way. Thank you very much. I am sure one of these days we are going to have our own stories in our own way, and we will have fun. Thank you very much. But before we leave, oh, Liz, your hand is up, please. You can talk.
Yes, I've been listening to you, Doreen, tell the Anansi story. And my question is whether that story and everything you said, which I think goes beyond the story, has been written down, because maybe what needs to be done is to have you record the story in your own voice, and it should be written down as well, and then openly licensed if it isn't already available in written form, because the story is wonderful and the way you told it is even better. So this is just a small suggestion.
Thank you very much.